Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conversations with a Vet. My name is Carol Lee. I have a wonderful guest in the wings waiting, but before we get to my guest, there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. So, first off, over Veterans Day weekend, and that would be starting on the 7th through the 9th, is going to be the Mind Over Land Veterans Day weekend. It's going to be at the Linville Adventure Pasture in North Carolina, Nebo, North Carolina, to be exact. It is open for veterans, their families, as well as veteran supporters. So, last year, unfortunately, they had to cancel because of Hurricane Helene, but they're ready to make this particular one their biggest and most meaningful event yet. And they're hoping to see everybody there. It is free. You can go find event details. You can go to mindoverland.org or Mindoverland, which is on Facebook, and you can RSVP. They're going to have trail rides. There's campfire conversations, great food, biggest raffle yet, and of course a community that shows up for each other. So be sure to go check them out. Next, I want to talk about a couple of books. So Frank DeMith, he has written his second book, and it's called Defending the Eagle. It is a great fiction read, wonderful book. This is the second in a series. He's hoping to have 7 total books, and you can go out there. They did fix the issue on Amazon, so you should be able to search Defending the Eagle now directly there on Amazon. The next one I want to talk about, I just got this past weekend. The past weekend, we had gone to Vet Fest in Tennessee, and I met a gentleman. He is a gunnery sergeant, retired from the Marine Corps. He's a Purple Heart recipient. He is also a 5-time combat veteran with tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somalia, and had 17 years of service. And he just wrote a book called You Just Survive, and that is Jeffrey Sabins. So you can go out to Amazon to get that one as well. Really excited. I'm hoping, he did say he would be interested to come on the channel and tell his story. But of course we got to get in the queue. So we know how that is. And then my guest tonight, and I'm super excited for this. He has been on before. His name is James Blackwell, and he is U.S. Army retired. He is had been a CNN analyst, as well as an author. So his first book, and I know that we had gone out, and when we hit our 500 subs, we did give away this book. It was The Thunder in the Desert, The Strategy and Tactics of the Persian Gulf War. He has written a second book, and that one he has sent. So I have a couple copies of that for when we hit the next milestone. And that book is called Gunners, B-29 Machine Gunners in the Korean War. So I'm really excited for that and to get those read, or that one read as well. So if you would please help me in welcoming James Blackwell. Hello and good evening.
Hello, Carolee, and those watching, participating.
How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well. It's a nice break to be able to rest on Sundays.
Right. Well, it's an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you back on the channel. So thank you very much for that. And thank you for your donations of the books. We're super excited for that. I know, when we hit the 500 subs, to be able to get those books sent was just great. People loved them. So thank you for that. So for those who may watch this for the first time, or interviews with you for the first time, let's go ahead and we'll kind of start at the beginning again, and just kind of tell a little bit about who you were, James, as a child.
Oh my. Well, I started out as a child, and I was an Army brat. Um, and when I graduated from high school, I managed to get an admission to West Point and graduated in '74. Went into the Army, the Armored Cav, and developed type 1 diabetes after about 12 years in the Army.
Oh, wow.
And they were medically retired me. So I tell my grandchildren, when they ask me, have you ever been to war? I said, well, I was in the Cold War and we won it without firing a shot. Um, and so it was a great career for the time that it lasted. I had a degree, so we moved the family to Washington, and I got a job at a think tank, making exactly what I was making as a young major in the Army, which didn't go very far in Washington, D.C. in 1987.
No.
And it was there after about 3 or 4 years in 1991 when the first Gulf War broke out. Since I had been working in operations, I was always combat arms, and my last job was an operations officer at the division level. So by the time they got around to looking for experts to put on the air, my outfit was the Center for Strategic International Studies. The press office ran their experts that were available by seniority. And so the top of the list were James Schlesinger, Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski. But by the time the Gulf War really got going and we started deploying folks, they worked their way down to me at the bottom of the roster.
Oh my gosh.
And, I ended up on the Ted Koppel show. I showed in at Nightline 11:30 that night, and they had a sand table, and I was in my element. Oh my goodness. So that was kind of a screen test. CNN hired me the day the war broke out. I worked with them as their military analyst throughout that war. If you look at my YouTube channel, there are some selected excerpts from that time.
And just to throw that out there for those of you who
Sure.
are interested, the YouTube channel is at James Blackwell 4555/playlists.
Right. That'll take you directly to the playlist. And there's one playlist that is just my previous media experiences. Well, I did CNN for about 10 years, and they went off the deep end at about that time. And there was a particular event where I could tell it was staged. And I said, I quit. I'm not going to do this anymore. Shortly after that, Fox News started up. And before they even went on the air, they hired me to be their first full-time military analyst. I did that for about 10 years.
Oh, geez.
But then by then I was doing work for the Pentagon and for the three-letter agencies. They didn't particularly like a guy with clearances having that much media time. So I quit it all for about 30 years until I retired in January of 23 to devote my time to doing these books. In the meantime, yes, I did publish Thunder in the Desert. Our intent was to be the instant history of the Persian Gulf War of 1991. And it was instant. It was the first one out, and it has all the errors to prove it. And I teach a graduate course in military strategy. I challenge my students to read it and find at least 5 of the 12 errors. And if they do that, they get a bonus points on their report card.
Oh, wow.
So you have to be humble in this business, right?
You do. You absolutely do.
And so that book did well. I did another book on the cheating scandal at West Point in 1951.
Wow.
When the whole Army football team was caught cheating and dismissed. Mm-hmm. And so I did an in-depth analysis of that. And then it was time in 2023 to, put my analytic work to the side and start working in the interest of veterans, in particular, the 307th Bombardment Group, which my uncle had been a radio operator on the first B-29 shot down by a MiG-15
Wow.
in the Korean War. So that became an interest. It soon became an obsession. And I started doing volunteer history work for the 307th Bomb Group Association. And that led to this first book about the 10 gunners who were in the 307th in the Korean War.
That's amazing. Now, are you the historian then for the 307th Bombardment Group?
I'm not the historian. The group formed in order to preserve the memories and the association of the World War II veterans of the 307th. And it's, I think there's one survivor just turned 100 years old this year.
Oh, wow.
Of World War II, and he comes to every reunion. It's pretty awesome. But in the meantime, the families of those who lost loved ones in the 307th, whose remains were never recovered, have continued to work hard to find the remains and get them returned. They work both with the Pentagon's Defense POW, MIA, Accountability Agency, and with an outfit called Project Recovery. It's an amazing outfit that has funded and financed and organized recovery operations in cooperation with DPAA. And they have found several crash sites underwater that they're still investigating and intending to recover remains from those crash sites. So that's the main focus of the 307th Association. They have an excellent historian, Jim McCabe. He's awesome. He's taught me a lot. But they brought me on to start looking at the history of the 307th in the Korean War. And they hope to expand and keep their work going by working with veterans and their families of the Korean War and the Cold War and the Vietnam War. They had B-52s in the Vietnam War, and there's still an active bomb wing at Barksdale Air Force Base with B-52s. And I say it's active, it's a reserve component, but there's always at least a half of them activated so that they can participate in current operations. And you'll see them very often in these deployments that the B-52s make. So there's cooperation with the Air Force unit as well. And it's a marvelous association. They have a reunion every year, and I'm publishing, writing newsletters and anecdotes for them to capture about the 307th in the Korean War.
Wow. I think that's amazing what you're doing and how everything kind of is coming together. You're able to find those stories. Now, you and I briefly talked at the beginning of this that it's a little time consuming, very intensive as far as the research goes. So tell me a little bit about the process for that.
Oh my. Well, I'm an analyst, so I'm used to digging deep for source documents and data and trying to put it together in a way that tells the story of an organization or a mission, or even just an answer to a research question. My work for the Pentagon, of course, had lots of footnotes and sources. And I try to carry that over into research on veterans and the organization. So I managed to get access to the Air Force Historical Research Agency, which is the repository for all of the unit histories of all the groups and wings and squadrons of the Air Force. They've got all that compiled and digitized, so you don't even necessarily have to travel to their location down at Maxwell Air Force Base. You just have to be patient and make a request and wait for them to clear it and then get it to you. So that's been a wonderful source. There is a lot of documentation available at the National Archives and Records Administration. A lot of photographs are there, some video and audio. Again, you have to work through their registries to find out what records are on hand, and then request them, and then you make an appointment to go in and examine those documents. So I've spent a lot of time there. And a lot of folks have written a lot of books. And so you try to capture those memoirs and those other histories. I've just completed reading General LeMay's history, his memoir. There's a lot of, biographies of General LeMay. His own memoir is a very different read. It's mostly storytelling by a great American. And it's a very different style and genre entirely. I wouldn't necessarily tell everybody to go read it, but it makes for a good read if you like reading histories and personal stories. He doesn't hold back, even in his language, right? He lives up to his reputation. So you do a lot of searching for these memoirs that are out there. A lot of them are not very well known, but you dig them up and you really capture a lot. And there are some oral histories that several veterans groups have assembled that are just rich with stories. In many cases, they've interviewed the actual veteran. I mean, they go out to the veteran's location and they'll videotape it and put it up on their website in the Library of Congress. If you go to the Library of Congress Veterans History Program, there's probably 400 or 500 oral histories from World War II on up into Vietnam and even in the Gulf War. And you can search by name. So if you know who you're working on, you just type their name in and it'll show you who it is. It's a searchable database. There are lots of search terms you can use. Very rich source. And they also are a repository for some of the personal documents of the people that have done a history. And you won't find those anywhere else. That too is a very, very rich source. And there are some foundations that have done oral histories. In particular, for my field is the Korean War Legacy Foundation, financed and funded by South Koreans, nonprofit that also does oral histories about those who fought the Korean War. And I found the South Koreans to be very, very grateful for what America did for them in the 50s. And they continue to be generous in their praise and support for veterans organizations.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. Out of everything that you have gone through and done in your lifetime.
Oh, my.
Right. As far as military, working, in the different ABCs that you did, doing, all of that, the analyst, what was your most favorite job?
Oh, that's an easy one. I was a cavalry troop commander for an armored cavalry troop at Fort Bliss in 1978, 79. That was the richest experience that I have ever had in my professional career. Although we were in the Cold War and stationed at Fort Bliss, we were alerted for possible deployment when the Iranian students took the U.S. Embassy.
Mm-hmm.
That was an interesting time. And then we did 3 deployments into Germany for Operation Reforger. And those were also very interesting adventures, but experiences in command that you just cherish. I think even 3- and 4-star generals will tell you their favorite was command at company level.
Yeah.
I didn't get any farther than that. being a division ops officer and a battalion XO was also rich. But I had to put all that behind. And so in my second career as an analyst, I would say the work I did for the Department of Defense for about 10, 15 years, I was working studies for the Office of the Director of Net Assessment. And we were doing war games and analyses to look at what the next war and the war after next would look like. And that was very rewarding because now you can look back, right, and see if we were right.
Yeah.
And some of those histories are actually on my website. You can some of them were unclassified and cleared for public release. And I won't betray what fun you can have looking at my website, but they're there.
Right. I do want to put, Ron, thank you very much. So this is your YouTube channel.
Yes.
So you can go out and subscribe to his channel if anybody's interested out there. Ron, thank you so much for doing that. Much appreciated. I'm going to leave that up there for people for just a little bit there. As an analyst, obviously you had the military background and you had a lot of insight. Did you ever have an opportunity where, I'll say it as an opportunity, but you can use a different term if you care to, where you're maybe under the impression that something is going to be going one direction and it ends up going a different way than what you thought?
In the real world, let me think about that one. Certainly, it was interesting to look at the aftermath of 9/11, when most analysts, including myself, were projecting warfare of the future to be high-tech and highly mobile, both air and ground. And we ended up in in an anti-terrorism campaign. They used to call it low intensity conflict, but it turned out to be nothing at all low. But it was a very, very different kind of warfare. I think only now are the things that we had projected back then in the 90s now coming to fruition. But at the same time, many of the tools that were emerging in the 90s were adapted and applied to the global war on terrorism and to the downfall of the Iraqis in 2002. So that was different. We didn't expect that. There weren't many analysts who were.
Right.
So I felt okay.
Yeah.
But they learned, the military learned adapted very, very quickly, as did the intelligence community, because they were deeply engaged in not only collecting, but in operations against the terrorist cells. And I think in one of my video clips from Fox News, I pointed that out. When I was asked a question, how's this war going? I said, well, it's not going at all like we thought it would. I think the question, it was from John Scott, who's still on Fox News, a younger John Scott of a younger Jim Blackwell. How come we're not sending the B-52s to just bomb them into oblivion? I said, well, they're not bombable, really. They're fighting a networked war,
right? And
what you do is you bop one of them, and then a couple other will pop up. And if you got your intel right, you'll be able to bop them too. Sometimes not by B-52s, but by guys on the ground who've been hiding there for a long time. And so, even our anti-terrorist campaigns adapted But that war didn't come out like we thought it would at all.
Yeah. And when you got it right, which was a lot of the time, um, in that analyst role
Yeah.
between CNN and Fox News, I know, at some point in my life, I have watched you, and just didn't even realize it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I looked a lot younger back then,
didn't we all?
Shirley.
Didn't we all? But and just thinking about, for me, how difficult it would be to try and analyze something where really the outcome is kind of up in the air. I mean, because anything can happen when you're in war. So, I think you've done a wonderful job in that regard. So, and keeping people kind of up to date and where the most likely path of things is gonna go. So, I think that's wonderful. So, you have done Thunder in the Desert about the Persian War, and that was a great success. And then Gunners is your second or third book.
It is my third. Yeah.
Okay. And so as you were going through and collecting research on the machine gunners in the Korean War, the B-29 machine gunners in the Korean War, was there anything that you found in that research that just shocked you or surprised you? I know you were saying you had um, a relative that had been in the Korean War. Um, what can you say to that as far as surprising things that you didn't really expect to see?
Um, Probably, well, not even probably, surely is the fact that most of the analysts of the air war in Korea were off. Most of the histories of the air war in the Korean Peninsula have to do with the fighter battles. The MiGs versus the Sabre jets, and that was a huge part of it, to be sure. But when historians and analysts looked at the bombers, they focused on their conclusion was that the B-29 was obsolete, it was outclassed, and it just wasn't very effective. And the morale among the crews was not good at all. I mean, people sometimes have this image of MASH, right? The
Right.
old
Yeah.
TV show and the movie, and project that onto those who fought the air war. And to be sure, the 307th was deployed to Kadena. There was already a bomb wing, a B-29 wing there. No housing, so they lived in a tent city for about a year and a half, I think.
Oh, wow.
So the environment might seem to have been that way, but I found that to be not the case. When you look at the individuals and their stories, you see none of that low morale, none of that sense that we're second-class citizens, only a real professional edge to every one of this. I have yet to find a story to corroborate the conclusion of many analysts that the B-29 was obsolete. In fact, I did some analysis. I did some data in Gunners and found that the B-29s shot down 26 MiG-15s in the course of the war, B-29 gunners, while MiG-15 gunners shot down 16 B-29s. Now, that's more than favorable in terms of
Right.
aircraft exchange ratio. Now, there were 12 crew members on a B-29, but
Right.
generally they didn't all die. They parachuted, they were rescued, they were taken prisoner. So it's impossible to take a look at an individual combat casualty count, but certainly on aircraft versus aircraft, the B-29 was the best, was better. So it gets a bad rap. And one American memoirist called one particular operation Black Tuesday because of how many B-29s were lost. But when I looked at how many MiG-15s were lost that same day and a couple of days before and after, it turned out that 9 MiG-15s were shot down, while only 3 B-29s were shot down over North Korea during that 1 week period.
Wow.
So I'm trying to rename it from Black Tuesday to Hell Week for the MiG-29.
I love it.
Was.
Yeah.
And you don't get that unless you look at the individual stories of these gunners and the crewmen of the B-29s. Very heroic, and felt like they had accomplished their mission. And the amazing thing is, you never get a sense that the morale was low. In fact, what you get from them, and I did a lot more than just the 10 that are in the book. What you get is that they, finished their mission. They went to their debriefs, got a day's rest, went back out the next mission, and they did the same thing again. One of the reasons their morale stayed high was because the Air Force stayed ahead of the Soviets flying MiG-15s. They stayed ahead of the Soviets in tactics, techniques, and procedures, as well as technologies. The Air Force kept feeding new technologies in to adapt the B-29 to the environment that the MiGs created. And the analysts, if you will, came up with tactical ways to defeat the MiG-15s. And so the MiGs adapted also, but they were always behind the U.S. Air Force in the B-29s. So to me, that's a remarkable indicator that, no, their morale was not low. They weren't dejected. They didn't consider themselves obsolete. They consider themselves to be more than up to the task of the battle. To be sure, the jet bombers came along almost at the same time, right, back in the States with the B-47. And the B-29 was retired soon after the end of the Korean War. But you don't see any of that sense of dejection among the individuals fighting the Korean War from the B-29s.
I think that's amazing. And really great analytics too, because you don't think about that. I would never have thought about that there was such a difference in, those planes, between the MiG and the B-29 as far as, well, morale even included in that, right?
Yeah.
But it makes perfect sense. So in this, you have 10 stories from 10 different individuals who were there.
Yep.
Which one of those was your favorite?
Oh, wow. I couldn't give you just one, Carolee.
That's okay. All right.
I had to give you 3 of them.
Okay.
Right? One of my favorites was Romain Gregg, right? He's got a wonderful story. Almost flunked out of high school as a sophomore, right? And he was only 16. He managed to find a recruiting sergeant who helped him fudge a little bit on his age and the paperwork, got his parents to sign off on it. So he signed up, he enlisted to the Air Force. Though he could not read, I'm not kidding you, he couldn't read. He became very adept and very expert at mechanical things in high school, helped his uncle build his grandmother's house with all of the trades that are involved in that process. So when he enlisted in the Air Force, they made him a gunner's mechanic and then, a gunner because they needed gunners in great demand. So he turned out to be a very, very good gunner when he deployed to the Korean War. The story doesn't end there with Romain Gregg. When he came back, He went into business in the mechanical construction business, had a family, a dozen or more grandchildren. And he tells a story that he would tell stories to his grandchildren at night, right? Bedtime stories.
Right.
Still didn't read very well, but he told stories and felt that as he was getting along in age, still alive, by the way, as he was getting along in age, he wanted to capture those stories. So he wrote them. He wrote books. He published 3 books. You can still get them on Amazon.
Wow.
Children's Stories by Romaine Gregg. Wonderful story of triumph of the American spirit, to be frank about it. To me, he's just an amazing character, just cut from the American mold. Perfect. So that's one, Romaine Gregg. I think the other, a second one, is the first story that shows up in Gunners, and that's Philip Aronson. Philip Aronson was on my uncle's B-29, first B-29 shot down by a MiG in the Korean War, November 10th, 1950. The crew was 10 of the 11 crewmen survived the crash, and they were all captured and put in North Korean prison camps. My uncle died in captivity, but Philip Aronson survived. He was an amazing American. You hear all kinds of stories about our POWs, mostly about the brainwashing. One of the things I was able to do in this book was to debunk the theory, the popular knowledge that American prisoners were brainwashed in prison camp. They weren't brainwashed. Most of them, only 20-some out of 7,000 actually defected at the end of the war. Some were kind of passive resistors. They just kind of went along until they got out. Some were very active and physical resistors. They were tortured. Many of them did not survive. Some did. Philip was what we call a cognitive resistor. I read a report by a psychologist who said it's just the skills they use to resist the North Koreans and the Chinese captors and indoctrination was the same thing that caused young American males in high school in the 1950s to defeat the high school principal and the teachers, to get away with whatever they were trying to get away with. And he said that bunch of guys formed what he called the cognitive resistors. And so they would play mind games with their captors and even with the interrogators and the leadership of the prison camps. And Philip was just classic in that regard. I won't spoil the story.
No,
you got to read it.
Yeah.
But it's a very refreshing story that hasn't really come out in recent years in histories of the Korean War. And then the third one, my hero, is Tom Stevens. Tom Stevens was a high school basketball star in Missouri in 1950.
Oh, wow.
He enlisted in 1951, went to gunner school, very smart guy, graduated at the top of his class in gunner school, went to Korea about midpoint in the war. And when you look at his oral history, you find he says this remarkable statement. He said, the MiGs were not really a problem. Most of our problem was with the anti-aircraft fire. And I can confirm that conclusion from the archival stories, archival histories, that even the bomber command in the Korean War was concerned because they weren't getting any MiGs coming up from about October, November 1951 until midsummer of 1952. And that's after, some of the more intense engagements earlier in 1951. So they were, where are the MiGs was a big question. And I kind of answered that. They were changing their tactics. And they came out differently in early 1952. But that's not part of the Tom Stevens story. He completed his 27 missions, not a scratch on him, came back to the United States and went to college, got married, had kids, and went to work right away, was hired by Southwest Bell, and spent a 35-year career with them. Retired. His kids are grown, grandchildren are around, and it's such a classic American story. You can't put it down. Yeah. And it's actually typical of his generation. Time magazine called that group the silent generation. They preceded, or they followed, the greatest generation, right?
Right.
And so when the silent generation came back from the Korean War, they went straight to work. Mm-hmm. There were no parades like for the greatest generation. They didn't even have protests, right? Like the boomers who came back from the Vietnam War.
Right.
They just were absorbed into American society and went to work. And that's true of every one of these men who came back from the Korean War in gunners. That's a great lesson for generations today, I think. That you can go fight a war for your country and come back and continue to serve. Now, Tom's story doesn't end with his time with the Southwestern Bell. He formed a chapter of the Korean War Veterans Association at home in Overland Park, Kansas. That grew to be a very substantial one of the many chapters of the Korean War Veterans Association in the 70s and 80s. And he rose actually to become the national commander, the national president of the KWVSA for 2 terms, and was instrumental in the support and the ultimate success of building the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Oh, nice.
He brought that whole association to the support of the foundation that was going about building it, and was present when it was dedicated. He's got wonderful photos of himself and his wife with President Obama. Later with Vice President Pence when the North Koreans sent those 70 some odd remains for a dignified return, and continued to serve even after that. He organized a construction fundraising of the Korean War Memorial in Overland Park, Kansas. It's a wonderful memorial with granite walls and stone pillars, a tremendous memorial. He's still very proud of that, and he should be.
Yes.
And he stays active. We brought him to the latest reunion of the 307th Bombardment Group Association in Kansas City, just this past summer. He's 92. He physically, he kind of shows his age, but mentally and orally, verbally, he's a hoot, a great American. So I like his story best, I think.
Nice. And that leads me into my next question was, were you able to meet any of those? And so I assumably, obviously, you've met Tom.
Yeah, Tom Stevens is the only one of the 10 gunners I was able physically to meet. Now, I had phone calls and traded emails and text messages with Romaine Gregg and the other living veteran, Jack Bernasiak. They are, very interesting personalities, and they enjoy communicating on text or email. But they didn't want to do in-person kinds of things. They're retired, right? They enjoyed, and they gave me permission to tell their stories. And glad to have that out there. I haven't heard about their reactions to the book, so they both gave me permission to print what I had drafted. So I think they're okay with it. I don't know what kind of feedback they are getting from their circle of friends and families. after looking at the book, but I think I told their story faithfully.
I think that's amazing. And you think about it too, how many of them really didn't share that story with
Yes.
family and friends, right? And because a lot of times they, veterans tend, as you know, to keep things inside, and especially like the Vietnam veterans and Vietnam era veterans, those, that specific generation really kept a lot of that in. And, it's not as easy to find veterans from that era who want to come out and talk about their time in, because
That is so true. If you look at the Library of Congress oral histories, it seems like they opened up in that environment where they weren't really conscious of the fact that it was going to be made a repository and made publicly
right,
accessible. The interviewers were very good at drawing out their experiences, and the veterans seemed to be more forthcoming. Some of them go 2 hours long. I to work with a wonderful veterans recovery organization called the National Center for Healthy Veterans. They have a farm near Lynchburg, Virginia, with a in-residence program that goes 9 months.
oh wow,
And they admit the toughest cases, and usually need a recommendation from another veterans organization to come down in residence. They get a job on the farm somewhere. It's appropriate for their physical ability. They go through. They have professional counselors full-time working with them. And they have a rehabilitation and recovery program on resilience, built on a resilience program that the Army began to put together for war on terrorism veterans that were traumatized. And it's headed up by Major General retired Bob Dees. And it's a very engaging and rigorous program that has a tremendous success rate. They get referrals from Tunnels to Towers and from the VA, the testimonies of the graduates are just amazing. So what I'm getting at is you're so right in assessing that sometimes we just need to listen.
yes,
And so when I run a book table now, I don't sell it myself. You can get it on Amazon if you want to buy it. But if you can find where I'm working a book table, I don't do any transactions, for one thing. So I buy the books myself, and I have a sign that says, if you're a veteran, take one. We will never forget. If you're not a veteran, take one and give it to a veteran. And that's my purpose now with Gunner. So I hope people will take a look at it and buy. If you go to Amazon and buy two, keep one, give the other one away.
I absolutely love that. I think that's amazing, what you're doing and what you continue to do in capturing the stories that otherwise would go unheard. And so thank you for that. Now, what are you working on currently?
Well, I'm working on a project that I started in 2007.
Oh, goodness.
So back then, my mother wanted to know what happened with her oldest brother, my uncle, because the family had only the telegrams that came from the Department of Defense. James Richard has been shot down and he's missing in action. A few months later, he's confirmed as a POW. And then, needless to say, after that, he's confirmed as a casualty. His remains were returned in 1955 in Operation Glory, buried at Arlington, but they knew none of the details. So my mother really loved her oldest brother and wanted to know more. So I happened to be working on the air staff. I was a pretty high-ranking guy at the time, so I didn't, push any weight around, but I did make requests because I knew who would be able to come up with that kind of information. And they came up with daily logs and operations reports that added some detail to what happened to him. And as an analyst, that just whet my appetite. And the quest for finding more about Uncle Junior became an obsession. And along the way, I found out he was in the 307th. So I went to the 307th Bombardment Group Association. To make a long story short, they said, we need a Korean War historian. Why don't you be our guy? I said, okay, but I'm on this quest. So please help me. And along the way, I said, well, you know what I really ought to do, in addition to a book about my uncle, let's do a book about the 307th, because that's a story worth telling as well, and hasn't been captured. And so I was working for years on a history of the 307th and a story of my uncle. I was going to do 2 books. And so I sent a proposal out maybe 2 years ago, to all the major academic publishers. I think I must have sent 14 proposals out for this history of the 307th. None of them wanted to touch it.
Oh, wow.
I said, what am I doing wrong? I said, what people really need and what people want to hear about are stories, narratives about the people themselves. So I started looking at where I had materials, and it was on gunners. So that led me to putting together the individual stories of these 10 gunners. And you'll find in gunners that the narrative style is very different across the 10 individuals. As I said, only one I was able to spend a lot of time with and meet in person. Two others, I got some interaction with them electronically. But 2 of them, all I had was the oral histories.
Right.
And so I had to pull together whatever I could get from their oral histories. There's 5 where I don't even have that. All I have is what's in the official record in the archives and in the Air Force of what they did. Those happen to be the 5 guys from the 307th who were credited with shooting down a MiG-19. And so the Air Force was good about capturing their story, right?
Yeah.
And duly publishing it. When you read memoirs, there are a lot of other memoirs out there from individuals and their friends and families. You get there are a lot of claims that were initially verified, but were not later confirmed by the Air Force standard for getting a confirmed record of destruction of an enemy destroyed. So but the 5 who were given official credit, their stories are in there, best that I could reconstruct from the citations as well as from the unit histories to account for that same encounter. So it's not like all 10 stories are the same style or even the same length. But that's just the way it is. That's right. The story's the best you can get them.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and jump out to the comments section and let them know. So if anybody out there has questions for James, go ahead and put those in the chats for me now. And then Ron shared the book promo. So thank you for that, Ron. So, and as he says, while you're there, you can go ahead and subscribe to your channel. So I will leave that there for a moment.
Well, don't forget to subscribe to Conversations with a Vet. That's
thank you for that plug. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really enjoy is being able to be a part of giving our veterans a voice and listening. And, I'm very, very low threat. I've had veterans who will come in and talk just all of a sudden about the traumas and, unexpected. I will have those who I kid you not, I had one who said, before each show, each guest, I generally will ask, is there anything that you cannot talk about or do not wish to talk about? And one of them had said, yeah, there is quite a bit I don't really want to talk about because I haven't even told my wife. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
so if I touch on something, just, go around in a circle. That would be great. So let's see, I have a couple questions. First question is from Jason. Where was your favorite place to go out of all your travels?
You're talking about as I was writing the book? That's
Probably, you
my
talk
military
even,
service as well.
yeah, in combination out of all of it.
Probably, and this comes as a surprise to me now, but shouldn't. We did, when I was my last assignment was at Fort Lewis, Washington, and spent about 2 years there before I was medically retired. I was the executive officer of 2nd Battalion, 1st Infantry. Now, 2-1 Infantry itself was very different. It was an experimental battalion armed with 117 dune buggies, some of which had Mark 19 machine guns, some had towed missile. A few of them had lasers.
Oh,
And the
wow.
lasers would direct ground-launched Hellfire missiles in on the opponent's tanks. Being the XO of that outfit was interesting, but taking them to Korea on Team Spirit was a hoot. It was an adventure. For example, our kids, you tell a kid this dune buggy will go 80 miles an hour cross country. They'll make sure it does and then goes 85 or 90. Well, they burned out a lot of clutches doing that. We didn't have a lot of them on hand. So we went downtown to the South Koreans, and yeah, the Cheap Charlie would manufacture clutches for you, very little cost. And of course, as the XO, that was kind of in my maintenance officer's bailiwick to make sure that happened. And I think that's where I became enamored of the Korean people. They South Koreans, for the most part, still highly respect Americans. And just, they've had their own history, right, of, right-wing versus left-wing governments and dealing with the North all this time.
Right.
They still dream of unifying the peninsula someday, but they're just so grateful for what America sacrificed and did for them in that time. And it was still there in 1981 when I deployed to South Korea with 2-1. So I think that was one of my favorites. The deployments to Germany were wonderful. I'll never forget, we were assembled down in Bavaria, cab troop, circled up on a break in the exercise. And this German woman came walking. I swear she came about a mile from her little village with 2 great big bags in her arms. She got to the center of our bivouac area and our assembly area. She opened it up and she served tea and brötchen to all the troops, and she never ran out. So those are the kinds of things that were really enjoyable. And I did other stuff that was professionally satisfying, but probably dealing with those people was the most, my most interesting trips. Now, in my professional career since then, been to a lot of places, and probably the next most would be during the Cold War, the State Department sent me to Romania.
Oh, wow.
In an exchange. And of course, we were tagged by myself and another retired State Department guy. Were on this trip. We were supposed to just bring American points of view to a conference they were holding on peace building in Europe, peacemaking and arms control. And so, we had our Securitate following us. They would trade anything for Camel cigarettes. or Salem's. You get all kinds of good food from them that you couldn't get in the hotel. So we were tagged and followed. I had a notebook with all my notes. Of course, it was unclassified, but when I got to the hotel, it disappeared and showed up the day I was departing to go back. And the embassy guys told us, yeah, there's probably some poor soul, a brand new security trainee standing in front of the only Xerox copier in all of Romania at the time, trying to feed originals in there to make copies for them. That was an interesting visit because shortly after we departed in September, in October of that year was when the people rose up and overthrew the Ceausescu government and actually killed him. I don't know that our visit had anything to do with that, but we certainly were able to see some of the undercurrents of resistance popping up. So that was interesting, to say the least. I've been traveling for quite a while, so it's hard to single out anything else in my professional career more interesting than those.
All right. So Ron Wayne, he has to ask, he says, what is your favorite hunting caliber? He says, nice mounts in the background, by the way, sir.
Ron, that's great.
Keen
when
eye.
I was younger, I went to a lot of places. 30-06 is my caliber. I've killed the bear, the axis deer, a whole lot of other deer. That's my favorite caliber. But I got to say, I lived in Montgomery County, Maryland, where you were not allowed to hunt with a rifle. You had to use a shotgun with slugs. And I got a lot of good looking deer with a shotgun and a slug too. So I don't mind that. And the other part about living in Maryland at the time was that if you were a bow hunter, you had a lot of public lands accessible to you that didn't have other hunters on it, because not that many bothered to learn the skills of bow hunting.
That is not an easy skill.
I enjoyed that. So yeah, caliber, that's easy, 30-06.
That's wonderful. So I think that's all I've got from the chats. James, do you have any final words for anybody listening, or in the chat? So anybody who will listen to this later on.
Yeah, no, that's good. Again, my mission is, go make friends with a veteran. Now, if you want, it's hard to find because they're dying off. There aren't many of them left, but you'll find chapters of the Korean War Veterans Association. There's another wonderful group called the Veterans Breakfast Club. If you haven't discovered VBC, just go to vbc.org. And I think it's what their website is. It might be Veterans breakfastclub.org. They have a weekly live session in the Pittsburgh area over a breakfast, but twice a week they have a Zoom session, YouTube live stream, and they invite anyone. You don't have to be a member. You just participate. Their motto is every veteran has a story. And what they do with their program is they open it up to any veteran that wants to tell their story. They don't screen you in advance. They work you in one way or another. They can't get you into a particular episode. They'll ask you back for a subsequent ones. And like I said, they do it Monday nights and Thursday nights faithfully. And typically we'll have 80 to 100 participants. Sometimes they have someone that's brought in to get it started, 15, 20 minutes at the most. But most of the hour and a half session is devoted to a moderator selecting people in the audience who want to share a story. It's really, it's been very rewarding for me.
I love that. That's wonderful. And for anybody interested, there is the link. You can go out and check them out, veteransbreakfastclub.org. I also,
the point is, to do what I'm asking you to do, go find a Korean War veteran. You have to plug yourself into these different veterans organizations.
You do.
And I suspect you, Carolee, have Korean War veterans or friends and family that would be willing to participate as well. And like I said, make friends with them and listen to their story. Buy 2 copies of my book, keep one and give one to that Korean War veteran that you find.
I think that's wonderful. And as a reminder for everybody watching, when we hit our 1,000 subscribers, I have 2 of James's newest book, Gunners, the B-29 Machine Gunners in the Korean War. So those will be going out as well. So be sure to share this site, and also check out James Blackwell's YouTube channel as well. So, James, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on and joining me tonight. And hopefully we will have you back again and hear what you're up to next. So if you want to hang tight for me, everybody out in the chats, thank you all for being here tonight and joining. Let's see, what do I have for next week? I have on the 19th, Noel Leisure, and he is an Army veteran as well. So excited to have him. So be sure to be here next Sunday, 6 p.m. Central Time, and we'll see everybody there. Have a great week.